Good day. I'm Derek Fildebrand, publisher of the Western Standard, and you're watching The Pipeline. Today is December 15th. We've got a great show. We're going to be talking about Brian Jean winning the United Conservative Party nomination in Fort McMurray, Omicron Hysteria, and a viral video out right now and up on the Western Standard. Westjet Employees doing a Christmas message of their own that might touch the heart of a few frequent flyers at that airline. I'm joined, as usual, by Western Standard Assistant Opinion and Broadcast Editor, Corey Morgan.
Good afternoon. I'm nice and cynical and embittered today, so it's a typical day.
Oh, I was going to say, how's that different?
No, I'm in a good mood.
And also Dave Naylor, news editor of the Western Standard. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing great, Derek. I've got my Christmas shopping done. I'm wearing a brand new Christmas tie that I got at our staff Christmas party, and a controversial staff party, Derek.
Very controversial. Scandalous, some would say. This year we had, and not all of you might know. In fact, I'm quite sure many of you do not know. But we had a visit paid to our Christmas party this year. You guys were expecting Santa Claus, I think, but instead Krampus crashed the party. Those of you who don't know who Krampus is he is the Christmas monster in southern Germany and Austria. In that part of the world, he comes around in the lead up to Christmas with St. Nicholas. They kind of do a good cop, bad cop routine. Children plead their case about why they were good to St. Nicholas. But if they're bad, Krampus is there, and he beats the children with a bundle of sticks.
Yikes.
And if they're really bad, they go into his bag, and that bag takes them to hell.
No wonder they're the best behaved kids in the world.
They, they don't talk back to mom and dad. I did not grow up with Krampus beating me with sticks or taking me to hell. But we to much of our amusement, we had a few emails come in wondering why we had a demon at our Christmas party. Krampus is not a demon; he's just a jerk, and he is a part of certain Christmas traditions. And we thought we'd mix it up this year. Instead of Santa Claus come in, we thought Corey in particular needed to be beaten by Krampus.
Unfortunately, I enjoyed it, so the detrimental effect of it was of no value whatsoever.
We cannot win with Corey. Just for those of you who know, we're not a bunch of Satan worshipers at our Christmas party. It was just a disciplinary measure for Corey.
And the meal afterwards was fantastic. You guys, if you haven't been to Bolero's in Calgary on McLeod Trail, good food.
Oh, if you're into meat, that is the place.
I had the meat sweats until about yesterday. Yeah, it was pretty solid stuff. We want to thank all of our Western Standard members for your continued support. Without you, we can't do any of this. If you're not yet a member of the Western Standard, go to westernstandardonline.com right now. Click on membership. It's only $10 a month or $99 a year. I think it's good value for independent, Western, bailout-free media. Well, let's get started. Dave, Brian Jean won the United Conservative Party nomination in Fort McMurray. I don't know if it's a surprise or not, but I think it's a surprise he was even allowed to be on the ballot to begin with, because all things considered. Why don't you tell us what happened?
I think the surprise, Derek, was how much he won by. He collected 68% of the votes against his Premier Kenney-backed opponent, Joshua Gogo. So Kenney kind of threw a lot of resources into it. He had the Justice Minister, Casey Madhu, up there campaigning, but it just wasn't enough. Brian Jean campaigned on an open promise to start to work to get Premier Kenney out of office. So the constituencies certainly know, or the members certainly knew what they were getting in his candidacy. So he is now will be an official UCP candidate for the Fort McMurray-Lac-La-Biche riding in the 2023 election. But holy cow, the cat is among the pigeons now, guys.
Corey, well, Dave said he will be the candidate now for the UCP in the election. I'm still not sure he will be. I don't know. I was shocked that they even allowed him to run for the nomination. And I thought, well, if they allow him to run there, surely they're just going to cheat. stuff the ballot boxes, do whatever they have to do. I talked to some people who were inside that campaign. The Jean campaign had extraordinary levels of scrutineers and whatnot around, making sure it could not be tampered with. People had on both sides of the campaign had actually trust in the returning officer of the nomination. So there was no cheating. I expected, okay, fine. If they let him on the ballot, they're surely going to cheat. Turns out, as far as we know, there was no cheating. So he won 68%. I think that's the number actually Jason Kenney won the leadership of the UCP by 4-2. There's a couple of common numbers that keep on coming up. 78% in leadership reviews, where you will be gone still a year later. 68% seems to be the number of the cosmos that Kenney and Jean, when they meet, seems to fix around. Brian Jean has won the nomination. Do you think he will be the UCP candidate on the ballot on by-election day?
I do.
Yeah?
I think Premier Kenney's kicking himself in the butt. I think perhaps everybody's always said he's a gifted organizer. He's as skilled a political operative as you can ever find. I don't believe they had an intention to cheat, but they really had so much confidence that we'll just be able to get enough people on the ground and sell those memberships that we'll just knock this off. And I don't think they had a plan B. They thought they were going to pull it off. They didn't. And just the amount of face loss to try and pull him out of it now, unless he can, I'm certain they're scrutinizing it. If they could find a scandal or something as an excuse to pull him, I just don't see how they can stop him. The reality is, no matter how good an organizer you are, if your support on the ground is minuscule, you just can't gather enough to win a race like that. And they just didn't have the base. To find those few dedicated supporters that will buy a membership, show up and vote, they weren't there.
So unless Mr. Go-Go, the guy who lost the nomination to Jean, runs or something like that, there's not going to be a single candidate on the ballot in this by-election that supports the current premier of the province. I've never heard of a by-election like that, where there's literally no candidate who says, I support this government, I support this premier, I support the current state of the party I'm running for. There's not going to be one.
Paul Hinman, the leader of the Wild Rose, also announced on the weekend that he's going to run there. So he'll split whatever vote, he may lose some UCP votes to him, but, Brian Jean's been a name up there for years and years as an MP and an MLA, and seems to be well respected. So I'm with Corey. Jason Kenney has publicly said he will sign the nomination papers if
Jason Kenney says a lot of things that he doesn't quite do.
If he turns around on this, something that I wrote on with this as well. And even if he pulls off, as we said, when you get 78% in the leadership, somehow they still don't survive afterwards. If your caucus has got a hold of your legs, you're done. And if he punts Jean without finding a really good reason to do it somehow before now and then, I think his caucus will turn on.
So we'll circle back to Paul Hinman and Wild Rose in a second, but okay, if Brian Jean is the candidate on the ballot on election day and they don't spike him some point before then, Kenney cannot allow him in. It's just Kenney kicked Todd Lowen out because he said Kenney should be gone. Is he going to allow Brian Jean, a much more prominent person in the United Conservative Party and across Alberta than Todd Lowen and Brian Jean? Can he allow this? This would be seen as a mandate from the voters of Fort McMurray to get rid of Jason Kenney. It's a referendum on him. So there's a couple of scenarios that come out here. The NDP has never had great strength in Fort McMurray, but they do get some votes. It's not really conceivable they could win in many universes. But Jason Kenney, I think, is going to be sitting down right now saying, well, what are the options besides Brian Jean in? Do you think Jason Kenney would prefer an NDP win if he could somehow manufacture an NDP win in Fort McMurray rather than have Jean in?
Oh, I'm sure he would. If what he wants, he may not get.
Well, that would be winning a battle in a sense of keeping Jean out of his caucus, but losing a war. Again, when you've got a nervous caucus thinking we're not going to win our seats back, and you just lost one of the safest conservative ridings in Alberta, the disaster on the other side of it will be just as bad as having Jean in there. He's got no good out right now.
I think Jean winning is a bigger loss for Kenney than the NDP. It's one seat. You chalk it up and say, hey, You know what? You know why the UCP didn't win? Because Brian Jean wasn't on Team Kenney. Brian Jean wasn't backing my leadership and supporting the great direction we're taking Alberta in, because then he could put that defeat, lay that defeat at the hands of Brian Jean.
You could try.
He could try. I mean, but Jean in the caucus, that's the cat among the pigeons.
Yeah.
It's
No,
madness.
I don't know how we deal with it. I mean, because Gene's made no bones about it. He's right out in the open. I mean, he's going to be in there organizing caucus members, saying, "Get behind me for my leadership." I mean, he's not going to shut up. He's not going to be. It's a hopeless situation.
Sadly, Kenney gave a press conference today on Omicron, which we'll get to later, but not a single reporter asked him about Brian Jean. We're not allowed into their conferences to ask questions, so that's why I certainly would have asked him. He's got no way out on this one. No way out that makes him look good.
Well, speaking of Wild Rose leaders trying to make a comeback, this is a bizarre by-election because there's two former leaders of the Wild Rose in there. Paul Hinman was the leader of the Wild Rose Party before Danielle Smith. He is now the leader of the Wild Rose Independence Party. As you said, Dave, he's running in this by-election. Paul, pulled off probably the most famous by-election win in Alberta history when he won Calgary Glenmore for the Wild Rose, just as he was stepping down as leader and Danielle Smith was taking over. I don't think his chances are so hot here. I mean, he's from the very south. He's from the Tabor area. It's about as far in Alberta as you can get from Fort McMurray. And it's going to be different. Do you think it's going to be difficult for Paul Hinman to make the case that he's the anti-Kenney candidate? Yes, he is the anti-Kennedy and anti-UCP candidate, but I mean, as we've been saying here, if you wanted to throw something in the gears of Jason Kenney right now, you put Brian Jean in that caucus. It's difficult when you've every single candidate on the ballot in this by-election is running against Jason Kenney. The NDP is running against him. Wild Rose is running against him. The UCP is running against the UCP leader in this bizarre by-election. How do you think it's going to work out for Paul Hinman?
I've known Paul a long time, and I love the guy. He's a great principled politician, actually. He's one of the rare ones when it comes to that. I mean, people might not agree with him, but he's always been upfront and honest. But I mean, you can't compare this to Glenmore. I worked on that whole campaign. We had a tenuous connection to it because Paul grew up in Glenmore, Calgary Glenmore during his youth, so at least it wasn't a complete parachute. Plus, you were in the middle of a large urban center, so we could take everything but the kitchen sink and throw it into that constituency, and we did as a party. Every volunteer, everything we could tap, we stuffed into there. Way up in the hinterland of Fort Mac, I don't know how much base they have up there to help him out. How much resources he's going to have to contest that one. I mean, he's a tireless campaigner, and he will have an interesting message and a niche I think he can grab, but I think his chances of pulling an upset off in this one are going to be very, very slim.
But another name he can drop while campaigning, Justin Trudeau, right? He sort of made his climate plans. Fort McMurray is net zero or ground zero.
He can corner the
So he can make a strong message that Jason Kenney has not stood up to Alberta. And look at what Justin Trudeau is doing to this city. And I don't think he'll win, but I think he'll get
a good chunk.
He can carve a good chunk.
The thing is, Brian Jean can also campaign against Justin Trudeau and Jason Kenney.
Yeah.
Everyone can campaign against Jason Kenney. The NDP would have a difficult time campaigning against Trudeau, but I mean, it's a bad spot. It's such a bizarre by-election. Normally, if you're a challenger party, you're able to run against the premier. But in this case, the biggest threat to the premier is the premier's own candidate.
Yeah, I don't think it's unprecedented.
The math on this one is really hard to work out.
Maybe the Alberta party will come out of nowhere and pull something off.
The Alberta party doesn't run in by-elections because then it shows the media that they're not a real party.
Yeah.
Do they even have a leader yet?
Yeah, they finally got one.
do they?
Yeah,
Okay.
they twisted the
Apologies.
Brooks in there.
Yeah, Barry Morshida. He's the former Mayor Brooks. Okay, well, let's move it on. Speaking of confusing things, Omicron hysteria. We're all gonna die. Actually, I think, what is it, the latest count? One person globally has died. One person on the planet. One person since I've been speaking in this segment has died from a car accident in Canada. But we're losing our minds over this stuff. New variant, media love new variants. Politicians love new variants because they ramp it up. What's happening in response to Omicron right now? Big things happening to take care of this very big, real threat.
I think Canadian politicians, Derek, they're looking at what's happening in Europe, and Omicron is like a wave across Europe. Britain's up to 200,000 cases a day. It's going crazy over there, but everything points to it being just mild. Only one single person has died in England because of it. Corey, you can talk about a South African research project that came out today that shows how less dangerous it is. But I think Canadian politicians got caught with their hands down on the fourth wave, and they don't want it to happen again. Yesterday, on Tuesday, the Liberals cleared the House of Commons. Nobody, the parties weren't allowed to sit there. Finance Minister Freeland gave her important fiscal update from an isolation center because a couple of her staff had tested positive for COVID. Trudeau and the premiers had a lengthy teleconference Tuesday night discussing everything from closing the border to limiting travel to only essential travel within Canada. That was pushed back by most of the premiers, apparently. But Ottawa's still talking about it and what they're going to do to try and stop this wave. That's already here. There's already 50 cases in Alberta. There's a lot more in Ontario, and they're doubling every day in Ontario. Quebec and Ontario today announced record highs for COVID infections this year. So it's already here. In Alberta, Jason Kenney announced this morning that rapid test kits will be available to anyone in the province on Friday from 740 different drugstores and AHS sites. You can go and you can pick one of these up, and it's got 5 rapid tests in. And so in theory, you can, if you're not feeling well, take it at home and isolate. He also did drop some of the Christmas gathering restrictions. It used to be that 10 people could gather from 2 vaccinated households. He has now changed that.
And no people at all if you're unvaccinated.
No people
You're not
at
allowed
all.
to have anyone in your house.
No. So he's lifted that household thing from 2 to any number you want, as long as it equals only 10.
And you're vaccinated.
And nope.
What about if you're unvaccinated?
They can do the same thing. Limited to 10 people. Children don't count. Dogs don't count. He's basically saying so many people in Alberta now have been vaccinated. We're closing in on, I think, 87% fully vaccinated, that he's able to loosen those restrictions. The vaccinated can go to house parties. The unvaccinated can go to house parties now, which is the first time in a long time that they've been allowed to do it. But it is, hysteria is certainly the word that comes to mind when you're talking about Omicron.
Corey, Jason Kenney says you're allowed to have people over for Christmas now. Does this mean you're going to change your plans and have people at your house?
Well, I'm too antisocial to have people over at my house anyways, but I do have some obligations to some other gatherings. And yes, we are changing our plans a bit. We weren't going to. He could have said 0 people in households. We were going to that gathering anyways, and do your worst. It's not happening.
I don't know a single person that has cared about any of this shit since, pardon my French, sorry. We're still working on our bleeper. 5-second delay. Put me on the Don Cherry rule. I don't know a single person who has lived up to all of these restrictions that were brought in when Kenney brought in the vaccine passport, restrictions exemption program, and these things. No one, not a single person I know, has been living up to them. So this is a fait accompli. Jason Kenney said, I think, he has to change the rules because he'd be in violation of them with his own plans. Good to know that when your own plans get in the way, that'll change government policy. I suppose it's better. Remember the Sky Palace, famous Sky Palace dinner and drinks. I would have been happy if they changed the rules to make that legal before they did it. I suppose this is an improvement where they would leave the restrictions in place on people and then disregard it themselves. Now, if they want to do something themselves, they're going to change the rules to the rest of us as well. So this is an improvement.
Yeah, from Kenney's end. But this whole Omicron hysteria, as we framed it, it's just, I'm getting very concerned about it. Not even in the slightest concerned about the virus, because I've been looking into it, and this is nothing to be afraid of. The numbers are coming out. They can't pretend it.
Go into that South African
Certainly,
study.
yeah. So I was digging. I did a column this morning on this. In South Africa, where it began, or at least they first started seeing it, 78,000 cases they looked through. It is, asymptomatic to mild symptoms. It is confirmed. And then the European numbers that I got, the December 15th numbers of about 3,000 confirmed cases, again, mild to asymptomatic. They have found that it is definitely much more virulent. It's spreading a heck of a lot more easily and faster, so that's what got people concerned. But I don't care. If it's not hurting me, I don't care how fast it spreads. In fact, spread faster. Let's get it out of the bloody way, because the other thing they discovered
This is not medical advice, YouTube.
No,
Just so you know,
absolutely not.
YouTube, this was, Corey was joking. He didn't mean
Yes.
anything he said there. We swear to God, YouTube, we have not violated your community standards.
I am not saying people should catch any sort of ailment.
Absolutely.
I'm just saying that once a communicable disease moves through a population, they are left with a natural immunity afterwards.
YouTube, we did not say anything about natural immunity. Natural immunity does not exist. Vaccines are the only absolute way to go. Trust the World Health Organization and your local health authorities. We would never dream of contradicting them, except when they contradict themselves.
Have you not heard the old story about never poke a bear?
No. We are just complying with YouTube's community standards terms of services. No, Corey was actually joking. Mm-hmm. There is no such thing as natural immunity. There's no such thing as herd immunity. Only vaccines. That is our clear position.
Either way, getting on to what I am concerned about, when we do have a government that's talking about shutting down travel again, that's making people quarantine again. These are things that are going to devastate the hospitality industry again. They're going to ruin those towns that are on the border, that were reliant on cross-border traffic over something that, to date, from everything studied, is not harming people. I don't know if we panic over this. The other thing, as I wrote with the boy crying wolf comparison. So if you've really pulled the alarm bells and the panic button and gone crazy over this, and it doesn't turn out to have been terribly devastating, if and when, because there may be a variant that comes out that'll be very dangerous and bad.
But who's going to believe it now?
Take it seriously, yeah, because we went off our handles over this particular one. This is just bad policy, and going into the Christmas break, and it's just bad.
That's been a long-term concern of mine. Is where the governments and some health authorities have cried wolf so many times that eventually there's going to be a bad one. Maybe it's not in COVID-19. Maybe it's something completely different. Maybe it's a variant of COVID-19 at some point, and it's going to be the real killer. Eventually, there is going to be a really, truly devastating pandemic, and I'm going to have a hard time believing it until I know someone dead. I mean, and that is what happens when you cry wolf. Not that we are YouTube. Not that we are saying that anyone is crying wolf. That we're casting any aspersions on the World Health Organization or Alberta Health Services. We're just speaking very hypothetically here. Nothing to do with COVID. Well, let's talk about something that is hurting people. Mandatory vaccines, largely imposed by the federal government. The federal government saying it's illegal to fly unless you're vaccinated. No exceptions. Airlines have responded to that and are firing their employees. Some of them very long-standing, loyal employees who are not vaccinated. There was a very, WestJet does these great Christmas commercials every year. I find it very touching. I've always been a big lover of WestJet, Western company. They had a small business feel to them, especially before they were unionized. People, you get on the plane, every employee there, the stewards, stewardesses, and the pilots and everybody, they acted like they owned it because they did. They cared about it. That's changing as this company gets a bit bigger, unfortunately. But they do these heartfelt Christmas commercials every year. Now, quite a few WestJet employees let go, and they put together a Christmas commercial of their own. Why don't we play it now? Okay, well, that was just a very short bit of the video. I think it's about a minute and a half, pushing 2 minutes long. This thing has gone viral. We got a hold of it. I one of our reporters, Melanie Risden, spoke with a pilot who lost his job, who was a figure in putting this video together. We have not named him. Maybe he's hoping to get a job back at some point someday. And
maybe another airline.
Maybe another airline. But we wanted to respect his privacy. But this video, Dave, this video has gone nuts. It's touching a nerve, isn't it?
It's gone nuts, and I think it has, as Corey, or as you said, I'm sorry, the WestJet ads every Christmas, they become world famous, really. And this one also touches the heartstrings, but for all the wrong reasons for the company. Their vaccine mandate was effective this week. All these poor people got fired on Monday. So the video shows them arriving in a bus at WestJet headquarters and slowly marching to the front door and dumping off their WestJet gear and joining the line of unemployed in Canada. So exceptional video. I urge you to go to our site and watch it. It could not be any worse for the company, can it, Corey?
No, I mean, WestJet built quite a brand based on a couple of things. I mean, one was, yes, they were supposed to be the best place in the world to work for. They valued their employees. They bent over backwards for their employees. They recognized them. And one of the areas where they would do it were those annual Christmas promotions and commercials and gimmicks that they would do. And these employees definitely knew where to, I guess, put the knife to the heart of WestJet back to say, turning their own emotional pleas back at them to say, well, this is how WestJet treats their employees at Christmas now. And obviously people recognize the irony of that and how deeply it cuts, because I mean, we've never seen a video take off so quickly, so heavily, so viral. I mean, it's into the 6 figures of views. What a disaster for the PR department of WestJet when you have over 100,000 Canadians watching something that cuts into you like that.
And a lot of the comments on our website they're angry. They vow they'll never fly WestJet again.
Well, there's a new low-cost carrier setting up in Calgary. Maybe it might turn into an opportunity for them.
Well, breaking news here. I've decided I'm firing all employees from the Western Standard who are vaccinated. Except myself. Except myself, because I get to do that. It's a tearjerker, that video, and their only sin was making their own decision. As I've always said, I'm vaccinated. I personally think it's the right choice for me. But everyone should have the right to make up their own mind. I just can't conceive of firing loyal, dedicated employees who just decided to make a different health choice than me. But at the same time here, let's remember, WestJet's not the only one to blame. The federal government is also to blame for making it mandatory that everyone, who even flies on a plane, not just employees, everyone on a plane has to be vaccinated. Yeah,
and the same thing's happening at Air Canada. They're firing their staff who are unvaccinated.
But they sucked already. Yeah. Like, I already hated Air Canada for a long time, I'd love to see WestJet come back, but it's getting tough to like WestJet anymore. I was flying WestJet this summer, and I was flying out east. It was like 3.5, 4-hour flight, and I fell asleep, and my mask fell off of one ear when I was asleep, and this like 350-pound male flight attendant who looked and sounded like Cartman from South Park came up to me. He says, like, "Sir," and he handed me a yellow card, like I had tripped someone on a soccer field. Handed me a yellow card, says, "Your mask is off. Why are you putting everyone at risk?" And I was just like waking up. I was like, "What? What do you want, Cartman?" And I didn't call him Cartman. I was, I don't want to get like tased on the plane or something. Get a Sky Marshal tasing my ass, but he was like yelling at me because I fell asleep and a mask came off of one ear. And that is what WestJet has become. Power tripping little shits who just treat it as a regular job. It's not the WestJet I remember growing up with, where every one of them acted like an owner, and it really came through.
Sad.
Very sad. Well, speaking of people who care about their jobs still, we do. We want to thank all of our Western Standard members for your support. Without you, we could not do what we do. If you want to support independent, bailout-free Western media, go to westernstandardonline.com, click on membership, sign up. I think it's going to be worth it. Worth it to yourself. and worth it to our ability to continue to produce content. We're growing in leaps and bounds here, hiring new staff, new reporters, new columnists, new support staff in the background to give you a better product. So please sign up if you haven't already. But we'll wrap it up there. Corey, Dave, thank you very much for joining us today, and thank all of you for joining us. God bless. From